Not a number. You're not a case. You're a person that needs help. The CUDA Law Team takes it personally and will put in the time and effort to get you the best outcome. Go to CUDALaw.com. CUDALaw.com. CUDA Law wins. Talk about your case and get real honest advice from the only law firm that wants to win as bad as you do. CUDA Law. You can chat with them too right now at CUDALaw.com. CUDALaw.com. CUDA Law wins.
Customize and save with Liberty Mutual Insurance Company. Only pay for what you need at libertymutual.com.
7:38 AM 560 traffic center time, and Jim Telemonte.
I-55 southbound traffic is at a standstill from LaGrange Road to County Line. Everything is blocked between County Line and 83 right now due to a crash with injuries. Inbound, there's a big delay from Lamont Road to 83. The travel time is 48 minutes from the Veterans Memorial Tollway to Lakeshore Drive. Inbound Ryan, it's heavy starting at 87th. There was an earlier crash near 59th, another near Garfield. Your trip time, though, is coming down. It is 22 minutes from 95th Street to downtown Chicago. I-57, 16 minutes. I-80 to the Verge. Bishop Ford at 14. Don Kennedy, it's 28 minutes. O'Hare to downtown. The Eisenhower at 42 minutes after a crash at Austin. That's traffic. I'm Jim Telemonte.
Chicago's Morning Answer continues next. AM 560 Weather Center forecast. Cloudy and breezy today, high near 38. Clearing overnight, low 35. We have clouds in 28 right now. Next news at 8. Breaking news as it happens. Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan and Amy continues next on AM 560, The Answer.
From the Matrix Home Solutions Studios, this is Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560, The Answer.
Listen to AM 560, The Answer, online at 560theanswer.com, on the AM 560 mobile app, on your Alexa-powered smart speaker, on TuneIn, iHeart, and radio.com. Let freedom ring this afternoon at 2 with Sean Hannity on AM 560, The Answer.
Top of the morning, Dan and Amy. The Purge, Eastside Community School in New York, sent this to white parents, Tool for Action, which tells them they must become white traitors, quote unquote, and then advocate for full white abolition, quote unquote. This is, as Chris Rufo, who's been on this critical race theory stuff, like a few others, maybe James Lindsay along with him. This is the new language of public education, and what you find in public education, you quickly find in C-suites in corporate America. The white identity dial, if you will, goes all the way from white supremacist on the one end to white abolitionist on the other. White traitor is what you must become right before you graduate into the sanctified space of white abolitionist. The white traitor actively refuses complicity, names what's going on. Intention is to subvert white authority and tell the truth at whatever the cost. Need them to dismantle institutions. And then the white abolitionist, the truly woke, changes institutions, dismantling whiteness and not allowing whiteness to reassert itself. This is the scholarship, that's also in quotation marks, of these race hustlers that have permeated every civic and cultural institution in America. So how does that manifest itself in corporate America? This PowerPoint from a whistleblower at Coca-Cola that compels employees to be less white. What is all this whiteness? What does it mean? What does it mean to be white? And what does it mean to be less white? They've got a slide for that, the Coca-Cola PowerPoint. To be less white is to be less oppressive, be less arrogant, be less certain, be less defensive, be less ignorant, be more humble, listen, believe, break with apathy, break with white solidarity. That must be a comfortable place to be a employee who happens to be white, Coca-Cola. And that's the case everywhere. Disney made headlines again over the weekend because they have a disclaimer connected to their offering of old episodes of The Muppet Show.
Yeah, they streamed 5 series, and they think that Kermit the Frog, Fozzie Bear, and Miss Piggy, they contain offensive content.
The disclaimer reads, this program includes negative depictions and or mistreatment of people or cultures. These stereotypes were wrong then and are wrong now. Rather than remove this content, we want to acknowledge its harmful impact, learn from it, and spark conversation to create a more inclusive future together. Yes, there needs to be a future in America where puppets are inclusive.
The warning is believed to refer to the Muppet characters that are stereotypes of Native Americans, Arabs, and East Asians. What about the Swedish chef, huh? Are we offended? No.
Well, right, but this is about dismantling whiteness, and of course, the Swedish chef represents whiteness. So there's okay to sort of parody in a hyperbolic fashion his Swedish representation, I suppose.
Is a dumb Swede, yeah.
It is. If you haven't experienced it yet, or you're someone your child in school, your husband or wife at work, you will. You will. For more on this, we're pleased to be joined by our next guest here. He is Stephen Soukup, the senior commentator. He's a senior commentator, vice president, and publisher of the Political Forum. He has a book out, The Dictatorship of Woke Capital, How Political Correctness Captured Big Business. Coca-Cola, perhaps a case study. Stephen Soukup, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much for having me.
So, per what you have written about, the incidents regarding the Muppet Show or Coca-Cola come as no surprise to you, I'm certain.
No, they don't. The politically correct action against American consumers and employees has been going on for quite some time.
Well, but so where does it go? I mean, there have been some backlashes in some of these, within some of these institutions. For example, you have Title IX cases at the collegiate level that where now the person or the group being discriminated against are men or white people, and they're using Title IX to sort of give those who are race and gender obsessed a little bit of taste of their own medicine when it comes to discrimination by category. How is there any backlash going on in corporate America or in pretty much corporate America? And if there isn't, what form could it take?
Well, unfortunately, actually, corporate America is moving the opposite direction. Not only is there not any significant backlash. In fact, corporate America is moving further and further into a more practical and effective use of what we would call woke capital to affect change within the global community. So it's actually moving in the opposite direction.
And where does it end, do you think?
Well, it's hard to say at this point. In my book, The Dictatorship of Woke Capital, I identify three forms of pressure on corporate America. One is from the bottom up, which is employees, woke employees who insist that their companies behave a certain way. A second is from the top down, which I think you're seeing from Coca-Cola and Disney over the weekend, which is that the people who occupy leadership positions are pressuring the company to be more overtly politically correct. And the third, which is the primary focus of the book, is from the outside in, which is all of the pressure coming from outside of these corporations to force them to behave in a certain way, to force them to adopt certain moral principles, to force them to behave so that they can achieve different social ends as opposed to their traditional business ends.
And over the past 2 years, though, what politicians, if any, have come forward to, sense that something's wrong with American business?
Well, the first indication that politicians were on the right were beginning to grasp what is going on was about 2 years ago when Georgia passed a fetal heartbeat law. The elected representatives of a center-right state passed a law and the Republican governor signed the law. So the democratic process worked, and a number of large corporations, particularly within the entertainment industry and led, in fact, by Disney, decided that that was not something they wanted to tolerate. Over the past 2 decades, Georgia has invested heavily in attracting entertainment companies to the state. More than 100,000 normal, average, ordinary Georgians work in the entertainment industry that it has set up camp in Georgia. And because these large corporations decided that they did not want for Georgia to pass a democratically passed bill on abortion, they threatened all of these jobs, and they threatened to pull their business out of Georgia. And so a number of Republican legislators took notice at that point and said, hey, wait a minute. This is corporate bullying, and it is corporate bullying that is going to impact normal, regular people. The first person to make much of a big deal about this was Senator Cotton from Arkansas, who took to the floor of the Senate to rail against these companies, particularly Disney, who were trying to impose their political beliefs on the people of Georgia.
How much of this is the big tech tail wagging the Fortune 1000's? What bragging the Fortune 1000 dog? In other words, you see Facebook and Twitter being more aggressive, YouTube and Google obviously as well, being more aggressive with censorship. And how much of that is saying, well, these are the cultural mavens, and we need access to their communication channels. We don't want to run afoul of their political mores, and so we're going to essentially follow the corporate culture of those big tech companies.
Well, a lot of it is in fact, as you say, being directed by big tech, but a lot of it is also coming from the finance industry.
Yeah.
If you look at, for example, BlackRock, which is the largest asset management firm in the world with almost $9 trillion in assets under management, for the past 2 years, its CEO, Larry Fink, has sent a letter to clients and to CEOs telling them that their primary responsibility will be to focus on sustainability, which is code for climate change, as their primary investment guidance. And so they expect for all companies to disclose any and all possible information about what they're doing with respect to climate change and how they're building their businesses around climate change and how they're preparing for this, to prevent this catastrophe. And if they do not cooperate with what BlackRock demands, then BlackRock will use its leverage to change boards of directors, to change management, to change the bylaws of the corporations. BlackRock has an enormous amount of influence, and together with the other 2 large passive investment firms, State Street and Vanguard, it can essentially impose its will on corporations, and that's what they're doing.
Yeah, I mean, this is one big blob, and so one institution or sector leader, essentially serves the other. They sort of meld all together, and that includes. We can't leave out the federal government. The Biden nominee for the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, a gentleman named Rohit Chopra, who is a Elizabeth Warren protege, has come up with an idea too. A paper he authored a couple of years ago for a think tank for a public integrity protection agency. The director would serve for 10 years, subject to removal proceedings similar to that of a federal judge. So basically, like they envision for the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, untouchable by the elected branches. And it would regulate political activities. Restrictions on advocacy, declaring that, for example, the use of think tanks and other nonprofit organizations to further the economic interests of its benefactors through policy research should be impermissible. And it would look at issue-based nonprofits, progressive or conservative, to identify whether they're advancing someone's interests, which of course they always are, and if they are, then they could be subject to federal regulation. So you have that culture coming potentially from the federal government. I mean, that's just in idea form right now, but it gives you an insight into the perspective and the mind's eye of these regulators at the highest levels of the federal government, combined with what you're getting from some of the most powerful CEOs in finance and tech. And it sort of goes back to the question I asked previously. How does this all end other than badly, like in some sort of Chinese communist authoritarian form of societal organization?
Well, I certainly think we're moving to a more authoritarian state, and that's the point of all of this is in the book I trace the history of the anti-democratic nature of administration, both public administration and business administration, over the last probably century and a half, to arrive at the point today where we have not just government, but, as you say, big tech and big finance and big entertainment, all intending to do big things, to change the way the world works, and to go around the people in order to do so. That's the whole nature of this. It's anti-democratic. It is intended to usurp the power of the people and to impose these political beliefs from the top down against the will of the people. So clearly, it's authoritarian by nature. I think before we end up in a totalitarian type state, however, we'll probably see a natural backlash in the finance community where any type of investment that misallocates capital eventually creates a problem, and allocating capital specifically based on social goals is clearly a misallocation of capital, and it will eventually cause problems.
Will that backlash be big enough and soon enough is the question.
Well, I think the backlash will be big enough and it will be soon enough, but unfortunately it's going to cost a lot of ordinary people a lot of money. When I say BlackRock has $9 trillion in assets under management that they're leveraging, that money isn't Larry Fink's. That money isn't BlackRock's. That money is yours and mine and everybody who invests or has a 401k or an IRA. So I think that there are hard times coming. But eventually, I think there will be a backlash against this, and the question is just going to be how much will it cost us.
He is Stephen Soukup, senior commentator, vice president, and publisher of the Political Forum. Check out his new book, "The Dictatorship of Woke Capital: How Political Correctness Captured Big Business." Stephen Soukup, thanks for joining us. Good luck with the book.
Thank you very much for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank you, and he joined us on our